Welcome to another episode of Don't Call It Small. I'm your host, Natasha Foreman. If you don't know me and you have no clue what this podcast is all about, let me share a bit. I'm the CEO of ForemanAssociates, LLC, where we provide consulting, business support, and professional development services. And Don't Call It Small is where we talk all things business, share tips and news that you can use, and highlight the people and ideas behind the products and services that we buy. To learn more about our team, please visit ForemanLLC.com. Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness, Happy New Year. We're actually in a whole new month, right? I just took a nice little break. Oh wow, it is good. I'm glad to be back. It's good to be back. Blessed to be back. Oh my goodness. I am really excited about today's episode. We're now in our third season, and we're going to talk about chasing goals and how we can sidestep burnout. So I wanted to start off with a quote from Nara Lee that says, "You don't have to be worthy of a goal or dream. Your goal or dream must be worthy of your life." And I really feel that that helps to shape and frame today's conversation that we're going to dive into. There's, of course, difference between dreams and goals. And if you've heard some of my previous episodes, I've talked about that extensively. But if you haven't, let me just go ahead and do a quick recap for you. And it's really simple. A goal is a dream with a date attached to it, right? There's some type of deadline. There's a benchmark that you're reaching. A dream does not necessarily have to have a goal, a date attached to it. You can say, one day I want to be the president of the United States. One day I want to be a mother. One day I want to be a homeowner. One day I want to own my own business. One day I want to be a billionaire. The goal is when you actually then challenge yourself to go a step farther or several steps farther to now attach a date to it, and understanding that our dates, we may fall short, but it's the challenge of the date itself that is so invigorating. And with that, we see a lot of New Year's resolution traps. And now that we're in the month of February, what will be really interesting is to see how many of you that set a New Year's resolution in December or November of last year, and how many of you are still pushing steady through that resolution, and how many of you have already flip-flopped and dropped it. I remember last January, we talked about that in the opening episode of that season 2, and this year is really no different. We can look at the statistics and they vary, but on average, about 50% of adults, make a New Year's resolution, but less than 10% actually keep them for more than a few months. And there are some reasons, behind that. It's usually tied to the fact that there is no driver of inspiration to those goals. There's nothing that is that weighted or heavy, positively or negatively, that is actually encouraging that pursuit. And there's some other layers to that as well, including some accountability and so on and so forth that we'll go into in greater detail. But I do want to say, when we tie things back to COVID-19 and the experiences that we have been faced with, and some of the lessons that have been taught to us, whether we learned them or not, but there have been some lessons taught about planning and goals and being prepared, and understanding that we should always counter the warm fuzzies of thinking that everything is just going to be splendorific. and understand that there's things that can happen. And can we plan for catastrophe? Yes, we can. Can we plan for worst case scenario? Yes, we can. It's not being negative, it's just being realistic and understanding that, stuff happens. And can we try to plan as best as possible? Can we think of the worst case scenario that could impact our household, could impact our business? Yes. And so, how can we try to plan for some of those things? And maybe it works out in our favor, maybe not. But it's better to have a plan and execute it and fall short than to not have a plan. So you're trying to now put up the barriers for a storm that's already hitting your front door is really not the best strategy. So there's another quote that I'd love to share. It's a Woody Allen quote that he said, "You want to make God laugh, tell him your plans," right? So we can have all the plans in the world, but if you believe in God, as I do, then you already know that there's already things that have been executed and implemented and put in place to counter sometimes our absolute stupidity. So with that, let's be mindful of that. We can set goals, we can make plans. At the same token, let's not be so hell-bent and so obsessed with them that we miss out on life. So I want to preface that before we dive in, because sometimes we can be so goal obsessed that we actually don't live. Now, there are different types of goals that can be tied to your life's mission, your company's mission, this vision, which we can say could be the dream, right? This big vision that you have for your future. And there's characteristics that we can look at. Some of you may know about SMART goals, right? They SMART goals, right? There's specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic and relevant, and they're timely, right? They're time specific, and they are also, you can actually achieve them. So there's a date attached to them. There is an understanding of goal setting theory, and that states that people have conscious goals that are energizing and pumping and motivating us and helping us to direct our thoughts and our decisions towards the finish line. And so those particular goals are meaningful, they're acceptable, they're challenging but attainable, and they're specific and quantifiable, right? We can measure them, we can track them. And so when we think of the requirements, these are these are some right here, right? But as I said, you gotta make sure that the heat that's on, that intensity that's on, the thrill that's attached to it has some type of date, whether it's by year, by quarter, or a specific date. You can say, October 27th, 2025, or it can just be, by the fourth quarter of this year. So there's something that you can set your eyes and your heart to. So there's, I shared some different examples of some business goals that we can have, some personal goals that we can achieve or work towards achieving. Some that can be like losing weight. There are some that say that weight loss can be a negative because you're seeing the weight itself as a negative. And so being mindful of how you approach a goal such as that, where you're trying to get away from something that you don't desire, just making sure that you don't let the negative connotation hinder your progress moving forward. So those are things that we have to be mindful of. And then sometimes what people get caught up with is how many goals should be set, right? You see people that have like these super long daily task lists, and then you have these, numerous goals, and you wonder why by the time you get to the end of the year, you still have a big chunk of goals left. And I will say that first, make sure that your goals are yours and not other people's goals, right? So don't try to achieve the weight loss because of a family member or friend, or because you saw some celebrity on the internet. lose weight. Let that be your own goal. But with the same with company goals, don't start trying to go down someone else's vision for your company. What is the mission and vision that you have been riding through from the beginning, or as you're starting? Let that be the guiding light, not what people think that you should. Well, you really should get into this. Well, who says, right? And so if that is something that is tied to your team, tied to your customer base, but definitely don't let it be because your mother says that you're good at crocheting, and so you should give up your law practice to now crochet and make creative crochet things. All right, I'm just saying, let them be your goals, not someone else's. And then when we're looking at the amount of goals that we set, it really does depend on a few factors. Number one is the size of the goals. Are these big, lofty goals? Something that is, gargantuan, that, it would, like getting pregnant, or, or buying a house, or, earning, $1 million or $1 billion in revenue. So the size of the goal is something that you have to factor in, and the effort that's required. How much manpower, how much energy, how much time, what types of knowledge and skills that you need to bring to the table. And if it's a really big time consuming goal, then you have to say, okay, this needs to be something that's 2 to 5 big goals in a year, and 5 may be a lot. So it's really looking at splitting that up, because we're talking about not just our career goals, but what are your personal goals? If that's traveling, if that's doing something, taking the kids to Disneyland, or whatever the case may be, right? Making sure that this is comprehensive of both your personal and your professional, because we're talking about having a balance between our work life and our personal life as much as possible. And I know some people argue that there's no such thing, and that's great. And for other people, they have found a way to make it balance. They've made it work as best as possible. So without running through that argument of whether or not there's balance, let's just say that making sure that you keep those big time goals to about 2 to 5 in a year. Now you would break those goals up. And here's where a lot of people make the mistake, is they don't know how to now take that big goal, which is your strategic goal, and break that down into now some chunks, which would be your tactical goals. And you'll now break that big goal down to, okay, what are the moving parts that have to be put in place to make this big goal happen? And then from there, you chunk those goals down even smaller, right? And those now are into how you can operationalize it. Those are then the daily tasks that you're putting into place that build into that monthly, the monthly or the quarterly goal, which would be the tactical, right? So you could have, let's say the goal is by year end. So that's that long-term goal that you have. You now have to break that down into quarters. And you can then break it down even farther into months, if you want to say. And then from there, you have the task that build up each day, each week, that by the end of that month, it should have certain results. By the end of the quarter, there should be other results, so that by the end of the year, you should have achieved that big goal for the end of the year. That's just an example of how you break it down. I live for my to-do list. When I stray from my to-do list, it's a wrap. I am literally like a leaf blowing in the wind. So I really need to make sure that I focus on that, and I'm tying myself back to what are the goals for this month, and really staying focused on that. And I'm going to talk about the purpose and the reason why we should write down our goals, because that is one very major layer of our accountability. And so I'm going to answer some questions that always come up. One is, how many goals are too many, and can you chase too many things? Number one is how many or too many is really based on, as I said, the parameter set of the size of the goals and the effort required. Too many could be 10 if they're really big. 5 could be too many if they're really big goals, because you're stretching yourself out too much, which will lead to what we're going to be talking about a little bit later in this podcast, is burnout, right? So making sure that you can do it and do it well, with excellence, not perfection, but that is the predictor of that. Can you chase too many things? Of course you can, right? Of course you can. You only have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils. So I can keep going with some of these twos, but let's just say that yes, you can chase too many things. You can lose focus on too many things. You're trying to, start, 5 different businesses while you're trying to go to school, and you're trying to start a family, and you want to pick up these 4 different hobbies, and you're trying to be in all these different committees and these different events. Yeah, you could be just doing too much. You're being a busybody, right? And so you then don't have to actually achieve anything, and you can blame your busyness on all the things that you have on your plate. That's just hogwash. So you need to be able to chunk things down so that you can actually get something done. If not, you're just the person who's just constantly going like a little tornado, but nothing is actually sticking, nothing is actually being done, and nothing is actually getting you closer to those goals being achieved by the date, the year, the month, whatever that you had set. So making sure that, once again, we're not leading to burnout. A lot of our physical ailments, our health issues are tied to the energy that we are exerting, that we're putting out there, that we are subjecting our bodies to. So when you start manifesting different things, different ailments and stuff where your body is attacking itself, that's energy, right? That's the different toxins in what we not only eat and consume, but what we consume mentally and spiritually, emotionally. All of that is coming inside of us, and all of that energy is just that energy. And so we have to be mindful of how we exert that energy, how we consume it, how we invest it, how we harness it. Now, moving along, I mentioned about, writing down and tracking our goals. It's important to write them down. Imagine a business that doesn't write down the goals. And how do you remember what the goals are? How do you remember who was assigned to handle what elements to achieve that goal? It also helps you to track it. If you put that goal and you, try to track it either in an app or some kind of software, some web-based system. I don't care if you just have it on a piece of paper or you have it on a calendar. It doesn't matter how you track it, but the fact that you do, to see whether or not you're on target or if somehow you've deviated. And so, currently I'm, doing my work as a professor, and I've dropped the ball in a lot of ways for my business as I am, doing the author, right? I'm wearing my author hat, and I've got these deadlines and things for the books that I am working on. And so I'm having to make sure that if I don't create a system that I can adhere to, that I can be challenged by at the same token, that can help me really work on and master myself in my discipline, to be disciplined, then I'm going to always kind of like flounder. I'm not trying to be the fish out of the water that's just like gaping for, oh my gosh, like, I need the oxygen under the water. This other stuff is killing me. I don't want to be that. So making sure that I write down those goals, that I am every day looking at them and looking at what my efforts are. Is the time that I'm spending online, is this helping me reach the goal or not? If not, get off. Something else that I have definitely implemented over the last few months, and hence why I have been less active in other areas of my professional and my personal life, is because I have, I put these different time locks on my computer, on my my phones, and position myself where I then can't access certain things online or my apps during certain parts of the day so that I can be more productive. Now, what I love is that, I've got a gift for Christmas, a new MacBook Pro, and I'm so grateful because my other one was like going out. And then, of course, if you guys recall, in November, right after Thanksgiving, my Samsung, it just crashed on me. So I'm now back fully 100% Apple, all things Apple. I got a new iPhone, another gift. I love family. Um, Family's like, we've got you, we've got you. Like, it's great to have folks that are running with you and cheerleading for you and saying, don't worry about it. You just start getting things coming in the mail. So I'm very grateful to the family members that looked out for me in those ways, right? Didn't even ask for it. See, that's another thing about what you put out in the atmosphere. I didn't even ask for them. I just was fussing because I couldn't get something to work right, and they just stepped in. So I'm really appreciative of all that. Now, with that, I will say that there are a lot of goal tracking apps that you can utilize and accountability apps. So you can actually go online and look for accountability apps that will track with you either for personal accountability things, but also for any type of professional or career related goals that you've set in place. And some of these accountability apps can be tied to monetary gains or losses. And what I mean by that is you can put these parameters in that you're going to reach this goal by X date. And with that, you're going to wager, $50 or $100, whatever it will stimulate you and motivate you to say, I don't want to lose that money. And some of the apps can have it where not only will it deduct that money from your account if you don't meet the goal, but it will then donate that money to either a person, a cause, or an anti-cause, right? It could be, you could have it donated to something that you don't stand for, which definitely I think is a great motivator, because you don't want to support something financially that you don't believe in. But with that, maybe it goes to a cousin that you just know is a leech and you really don't want them getting your money. I don't know, but that could be an incentive for some people. And so with that, those are one type of accountability apps. There's other ones, right, that are tied to where they have some that have virtual coaches. There's like different, and I'm not going to promote any specific ones right now, only because I haven't tested some of them myself. But there are quite a few out there that you can be able to utilize. Matter of fact, there's one in particular, and I can't say their name because the name has profanity in it. But it sounds intense. It sounds like accountability 101 all in your tail. So there are quite a few out there for those that need to have that greater push, and they want something more aggressive and less passive. So I'll say that those are definitely out there for you. Now, when we look at burnout, it literally is a state of the exhaustion, both physically and mentally. And it can literally suck all the life out of everything that you love. The love, the joy, everything, the light, the life, everything can come out. Your friendships, your family interactions, your career. When you're continually exposed to stressful situations, whether it is working long hours, working for a very demanding boss, you may have a family member that's ill, you may have children, whatever the case may be, it could just be the dynamics that are taking place in your country, in your state. We've had a lot that's taken place in 2019, 2020, 2021. And so all of these different things have come in place that where you can just, start to fragment, and it can lead to this stress condition that's called burnout. Now, it's not always easy to identify that it's burnout. A lot of people may be in absolute denial. And because of that, you then may not understand ways in which you can prevent it. So there's different things that you can to really do. If you're wondering, I'm big on history and research, and so if you're wondering where the term came from, it was psychologist Herbert Frudenberger in the 70s. He described this, and he coined the term, and it is so that you truly understand. It's more than just your typical fatigue, right? It is the absolute challenging depressive state of not being able to cope well with stress and handle your day-to-day responsibilities, to the point where sometimes you feel that you have given all that you got and you have nothing left. You don't want to get out of bed. You start to be more of a pessimist than an optimist. You start being more negative than positive. You start to let that hope slip away. And it doesn't just pop out and just go away, like a light switch. It can lead to a lot of issues, including depression and heart disease, diabetes. It can just spiral out of control. And we can see that there are a lot of professionals who are highly vulnerable to it. And sadly, it's some of the same professionals that we turn to for help. It's the doctors. It can be other first responders and nurses that get burnt out. We have law enforcement. We have military that literally it's just they're tapped out. So we have that career-induced burnout. As I mentioned, also we have the personal where, if you are caring for children or a family member or a parent, that can definitely happen. Fathers, mothers, grandparents can all burn out from, being caretakers, taking care of your spouse, all of these different things. We see that it happens a lot with A-type personalities, or type A, however you want to look at it, where you are perfection driven, you are a control freak, and you have a higher risk of burnout. And I can speak to it because I've burnt out quite a few times in my life. And it is because I do have control issues. It is because I can take my excellence drive to another level. I used to be very perfectionistic especially in my teens and my 20s. I was kind of like obsessed in a way and just felt like everything had to be aligned. And then I got out of that and I just focused on the excellence. However, my issue will be the control. My issue will be trying to do so much and feeling like I'm running out of time of sorts, and trying to pursue different things. Hence why I'm having to learn how to narrow down my goals and say, okay, I can have these as dreams over here. So these are going to be my dreams. These are going to be the goals that I'm going to go for, right? So I can turn around and have goals for 20 years from now, but those aren't the goals that I'm going to be pursuing right now. I'm going to categorize and prioritize the goals that I'm going to then focus on for the year. And that has been my best strategy. I'm not saying that works for everyone else, but when I am dealing with burnout and how that leads into depression and trying to counterbalance that, I have to say, what is the best strategy for me? And what I'm looking at is, Natasha, what are the goals for the year? All right, and now let's break these down into some chunks that fall into the specific. They're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and they're relevant, right? Because it doesn't make sense for me to be dealing with something that is not those, and that, of course, they're timely. And so when I look at that, I say, okay, now how can you tell if you are exhibiting some signs of burnout? Do you find yourself where you're exhausted a lot? You find yourself isolated. Now with me, I tend to isolate a lot. I was an only child for 15 years. So I always have that kind of only child syndrome. That can be a trigger of a sort, or how you want to look at it, is an easy hole for me to then go into isolation. because although people see me as, oh, she's such a go-getter, she's so a people person. However, I am very comfortable being by myself. I can isolate quickly. So I have to be mindful of that. Whoa, how long have I gone in isolation? I know a lot of you going through the experiences of COVID-19, you were kind of forced into isolation, and this is counter to what you're accustomed to. So it kind of rocked, and not kind of, for a lot of you, it totally destabilized you and your internal world, because it forced you into isolation, especially if you don't live in a household with other family members. So if you live solo in this COVID era, this can be really troubling for you. Understand that tied with some of these other signs can lead to burnout, which can then roll into other things. So you need to be very mindful of that. Do you have escape fantasies? Are you having these fantasies about getting away, and not like just going on a vacation? I mean, like getting away. Like, I am trying to, where on this planet can I go? And you're constantly now thinking of ways to get away from your family, get away from your bills, get away from your responsibilities, get away from life, these types of things. It's because you don't like the environment that you're in. You don't like what you're going through day in and day out and day in and day out. And so now you start fantasizing about a different life. Are you highly irritable? Are you snapping at folks? Are you cranky? Do you find yourself that you're cursing a lot more than normal, or that you're now cursing and you never did? Right? Are you having road rage? These different things, and it's not a laughing matter. I laugh because it's like I've had these where all of a sudden I catch myself. I'm like, man, this is like a Snickers moment, because I'm a little on the cranky side, and I have to look back and say, what is it tied to? And then, of course, frequent illness. If you find yourself where you're getting a lot of colds and different things of the sort, your body seems to be crashing a lot, and it's not tied to any pre-existing condition, it's just something that keeps manifesting, it is most likely tied to the exhaustion and all the internal energies that are flowing through you that are literally draining you. So these are just some of the signs that could be tied to that. And with that, you have to say, now what do I do, or where can I go? Because understanding that the frequent illnesses that are tied to that long-term stress, it can lower your immune system, right? And because your immune system is low, you're now susceptible to colds and flu and insomnia. And in the time of COVID, you don't need a lowered immune system. So making sure that is tied to, and then the most pressing conditions, which are tied to our mental health, the anxiety, the depression, and so on and so forth. We have to make sure that just as we work to get our bodies in shape, and we're trying to eat right, that we're also taking care of our mental health, our spiritual health, that we are tuning in and tapping in, and we're making sure we're doing these checkups. So there's some stages that we go through in burnout, and Herbert Freudenberger and Gail North, they are psychologists who mapped out the 12 phases. And the first is excessive drive or ambition. And some of you may say, what? Because this may resonate with you. So you may have to, play this back. But if you're starting a new job, or you're taking on, some type of, this task of sorts, that it's too much ambition can lead to burnout, because you're trying to ladder climb, you're trying to check these boxes in your life. You're trying to go and get that degree, and maybe the degree is, yes, you're trying to get it because it's a requirement for the next position you're going for, or for you to get that promotion. But sometimes some people are going for that degree for no other reason than they're just driven by ambition, and it looks good on their resume, and they can say that they have it. So I'm not telling you not to go, for it. I'm saying just check yourself as to what the motivation and the driver is. As I said earlier, make sure that your goals are your goals. They're not goals to align with society. They're not goals to impress upon people. It's not so that it looks good, so someone can call you doctor, whatever. Um, you know, do it for the right reasons and make sure that it really is about you and the wholeness of you. Now, the second phase is pushing yourself to work harder. And that's what ambition does, right? You set this lofty goal, you've got the drive, and now you're going to push yourself to work harder. So that means you're going to exert even more energy. You're going to most likely not get as much sleep, or you're going to do like I do, which I get plenty of sleep, but then I work at the oddest hours. So I may work all night long and go to bed like I did last night, or this morning, I should say, at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So things like that. And I've done it before. It is not always the healthiest thing because then it impacts the next day in how that flows. The third thing is neglecting your own needs. When you start to self-sacrifice the care and exercise and eating well that you need for self-care. Now, I said I get the sleep, but it is still, is it the best sleep? Am I actually pushing myself too long, too hard? And how much is my brain actually working at the rate and quality that, like, where's the cutoff? Did I go all the way to 6 a.m., but I probably should have actually tapped out like at 3 a.m. because after that, it was just kind of like, yeah, you kind of put something in, but it really wasn't amounted to much. So that type of thing is that I could then neglect the quality of sleep that I'm having. So I may get 8 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep, but what's that quality like? And then exercise. Do you find yourself where now you're skipping workouts? Like myself, I was supposed to work out this morning, but of course I didn't wake up until later in the day. And so with that, it happens to be that I then have to push that time back and then having to be committed to making sure I get it done or getting some of it done. Eating well, what you wind up doing is because you're so driven, you then start to snack, you then skip trying to get the wholesome foods, and you end up sacrificing and getting some type of processed food, which is not good for the brain, the heart, or anything else, right? And so all of that then plays into an up and down and spiraling out of control environment internally. And then fourth phase is when we start to displace conflict. We don't acknowledge that we're pushing ourselves to the extreme. We start to blame everyone and everything else for what we're going through. So it could be our manager, how demanding our job is. We start nitpicking the people that, our boss, our colleagues, right? Everyone else is the reason for our troubles, why we are so burnt out, why our bodies are inflamed, why we're not getting the sleep. It's because of everyone else. It's that person's fault. When you take a step back and look, you can actually see most likely it's going to be tied to your ambition, right? Everything's going to come back to the beginning. Is your need to be ambitious, that need to drive, that need for speed, however you want to look at it, right, is really the catalyst to you going through all of this. So you got to take ownership for that. Stop blaming everyone else because you've accepted, right? You keep saying, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can take that. Yes, I can serve on this committee. Yes, I can head this. Yes. And it's like, why? It's going to always come back to drive and ambition. The fifth phase is no time for non-work related needs. So you start to find yourself to decline invitations to the parties that your friends are hosting. And I know right now in COVID, yeah, that makes sense. But you don't even go to the drive-in movie theater. You may not even, snuggle up with your boo to Netflix and chill. You're now avoiding dinner dates. your significant other prepared a meal and you don't have time to even sit down at the table with them. You're withdrawing from family and friends because you are too focused on this work-related, ambition-driven goal or environment or the busy work, right? So, of course, the sixth stage of that is denial, because everyone around you is looking at you like you're crazy because you have grown so impatient. You're not taking responsibility for your own behaviors. You're blaming other people. You start to see people as lazy. Everyone else is incompetent. They're deficient. They're this, they're overbearing. They're too demanding. They have a too high of expectation. It's all these different things that you're blaming them for. When it comes down to is you're in denial that you are in this state of funk because of the choices that you've made. You can untangle it, but you have to first admit where it's the driver of it and take responsibility for you. Now, the seventh thing is that, now we already talked about you don't make time for family and friends. Now we're getting to the state of actual withdrawal, where you now withdraw from everyone. Everything now seems to start feeling like a burden, and it's not enjoyable. And so you are like, I just don't have time for any of it, and people just don't get me, and I'm too exhausted, I'm too tired, I'm too this, I'm too that, right? So you're now too tired to take part in things. Your eighth stage is behavioral changes, right? The more aggressive, you're snapping at people, you are insensitive, you lack the level of care and attention and nurturing. So there's a lot of behavioral changes that people can see. You start to depersonalize, you start to feel detached, you start feeling like you can't control your life, which, interesting enough, you really don't have much control of your life. You have control over the decisions you make, but whether you live or die is out of your control. Who comes in and out of your life is out of your control. If the economy shuts down, you can't control that, right? So you can't control all these other moving parts that you think that you can. You can't control whether customers come to your business or not, whether they leave your business or not, whether they buy your products and services or not. So, but what happens is you start to detach from your life and everything that's in it. And you start to then lead to the next stage, which you start to feel empty. You start to increase in your anxiety, and that anxiousness starts to build up. And so what some people do at this stage is they start doing some really way out there type of thrill seeking, because they feel the need to fill a void. And this can come from gambling. It can come from doing some just wild, crazy stuff like, I don't know. It can come from overeating, and then also it can come from substance abuse, from drugs and alcohol. This, of course, now is dragging us right into the deeper depths of mental health issues, which is the depression. And so with the depression, there is that seeping out of hope. Life is starting to lose a deeper, greater, more encompassing meaning to you, because you're starting to slip away from all the things that brought you joy, because the things that used to bring you joy don't bring you joy now. And so what you'd rather do is just be under the covers. What you'd rather do is not, bathe and not do the dishes and not go outside of your home, COVID or no COVID, right? You just don't. And I have shared before, my struggles with depression for many years, and having to, catch myself when I start seeing the patterns, pop up of things that I would normally do. And some of the things for me, and it's not for everyone, but some of the things that I can look at is, for me, my regular routine is that I make up my bed. But when I start noticing that, okay, I didn't make it up, I can kind of excuse it that I was, I got distracted, I got busy. But if it becomes a repetitive thing, day in, out, day out, I start seeing that I'm not folding up my laundry, that I'm just kind of like sitting in a basket, or I throw it on the bed to make up the clothes, but then I just left it on the bed, and it's there a couple of days later. If the dishes, if they sit in that sink for, a couple of days, and I'm like, and I can't attest it to, I can't tie it to just being, oh, I was busy, or this, I got distracted. Because if I've been home all day, then that means there's some avoidance that's taking place there. And so there's different things, and it's not necessarily saying that is for you, or that I'm not here to diagnose anyone. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just kind of sharing my own experiences and sharing some things that psychologists have outlined as some things, some indicators to make you more conscious of and to really think about, so that you can, take this necessary steps towards, healing and getting better. The 12th stage of this mental health spiral is a mental or physical collapse, right? Where you literally are struggling to cope. And so with that, there may be medical attention or mental health attention that may be necessary, where your body just gives up because you are just mentally or physically and right, it could be a either or, exhausted. Right? You literally have burned out. You have burnt both ends of your candle all the way into the middle. Right? So I would just visualize that. If you burn two ends of a candle and let them just keep burning inward, to the point where, there's barely any candle left, that can be that collapse, either mentally and or physically. So the question always is, well, how do we prevent burnout? One good way is to help really deal with the stress, right? Because stress, I've had doctors tell me, stop stressing. And you're like, what? Like, dude, I entered the world in stress. I mean, think about labor and delivery. That is stress. So stress may be unavoidable. Burnout is absolutely preventable. We can avoid burnout. We can sidestep burnout. Making sure that we make time for exercise. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It can definitely give us the emotional boost. It's definitely going to help with our physical health, right? We're making sure that the heart and the limbs and the blood and the oxygen, everything that needs to be flowing properly is flowing properly. You can do mini workouts. You can do little workouts at your desk, at the kitchen, in front of the television. You can do in the bathroom. I have time and time again done a little mini workout before getting in the shower. You're brushing your teeth, do some squats, some lunges, some arm circles, something. You can do some ab twists. You can do it if you actually, are intentional about it. And so making sure we get those in. Eating a balanced diet is very important, as they have already proven that omega-3 fatty acids can be a natural antidepressant. And so I am a vegetarian, so I have to find all the different foods that are rich in omega-3s, like flaxseed oil, walnuts, right? Because I don't eat meat and fish and poultry. So with that is making sure that we get that balanced diet. This is a great way to, if you don't have a nut allergy, it's a great way to get your source of omega-3s through nuts. Those of you that like fish, making sure that you're getting some, fresh, healthy fish, but also being mindful of the mercury levels and all the other things that can come with that. So it's just, finding balance in even our food sources. And as I mentioned earlier, the practicing the good sleeping habits. As I've said before, I've been able to sleep 8 hours, but was that healthy sleep? What was I having a restful sleep where I was able to reset and recharge? And sometimes the question answers no, because I don't know about you, but there's been times where I have slept 8+ hours and I woke up and I felt so exhausted. And that lets me know, okay, that was torture, right? Whatever was going on in my dream state, whatever I'm battling in the dream state, it exhausted me to the point where I woke up and I feel like I need to go back to sleep in order to recharge from the time that I spent trying to recharge. So some of the things that they definitely said is that if we can avoid caffeine before bedtime, creating a relaxing bedtime ritual, whether that's you praying or meditating, listening to some soft, soothing music, some affirmations, or audio book that's not, like graphic. So there's nothing talking about, things blowing up or people being, murdered or slashed. And then they also recommended that we can ban smartphones, cell phones from our bedrooms, because with all the lights and the notifications and all the other different things, I know that a lot of us use our smartphones for our alarm clocks and other features. I use it to listen to my audiobooks. So what I do is I have the do not disturb set up, but I also have it where the other apps are all put to sleep at a certain time. So nothing is popping up. And then I have it where my screen actually changes to a different set hue. So it goes into a dark mode. So it just darks everything out. And I also wear an eye mask. And I'm really thinking about investing in this ear mask, which it has little sound speakers in there, which can allow me to listen to either my audiobooks or, some type of meditation or something as I sleep with my eyes closed, so I can just really just encapsulate in that experience. Something that we need to also do is make sure that we're asking for help, we're reaching out. And I know that for a lot of us, and myself included, we can struggle with asking for help. If you are a control freak, if you have controlling issues, if you have a type A personality, you are less likely to actually reach out for help, because you're usually the person who's helping others. You're the problem solver for so many other people. And so this is a big step, but it's one of the most important steps. And this can be that you create some type of check-in system with your friends or family members that you're closest to. And, while we're going through this whole COVID experience, this is a great way of being able to implement now something that you can then continue practicing for years to come, is that not only are you checking in with them and saying that I'm good, or here's the things I'm struggling with, or whatever, where you can have this open, honest dialogue and transparency, and the same can be done in return. This is one great way. So if by chance you're not the one struggling with burnout, but you said, oh my goodness, this is so-and-so, this is my wife, this is my husband, this is my boyfriend, this is my daughter, the ways in which you can help someone, because you can't take away their stress, you can't take away their problems, but you can offer support to help lighten their load. The first thing is making sure that we can listen. We're not supposed to jump into fixing mode. And I can say this for myself because I'm a fixer, right? And some of you may be fixers as well. So we can't jump into fixing mode. We have to jump into listening mode. I'm also saying this to men as well, because that's the initial energy that men lead with, is to fix, is to be the problem solvers, especially of women. And so I'm speaking loud and clear to men. We need you to be listeners. And this is listeners to men and listeners to women and listeners to children, because children do face burnout. And one of my first burnout phases was in high school. So, trying to do all the different things, and being ASB vice president and being on this and doing this, and then you've got I'm in track and field, and I'm got my job, and I'm trying to go college, and all these applications. That was my first burnout experience, was right there. So understanding that even when it comes to your children, making sure that before we jump into trying to fix something for them, that we just truly listen. Because sometimes we need to just offload. We need to be able to vent. And so making sure that we can help with that, and making sure that we're validating people's feelings and concerns instead of saying, oh, it's not that bad, or it could be better. Like, something that used to always irritate me that someone close to me, or that used to be close to me, used to say to me is that when I was going through a lot and I just felt like the weight of the world was just like crushing me and just like I was just disintegrating, this person used to say to me, well, you could live in, and like that person would name like some war-torn country. And I'm looking like, what the blank does this have to do with my experience? I'm telling you how I feel and what I'm going through. Something else is saying, you quickly try to like validate or put a magic wand on something by saying, oh, it'll get better. Okay. It's really good to offer a sense of reassurance, right? It can also make that person feel as though you're invalidating how they feel. If they're saying that they are depressed, if they're saying they feel hopeless, if they feel as though, why am I even alive? And you just say, it's going to get better, right? Or however, or, oh, that's it. That's all you're stressing about. Please, man, let me tell you about my experience. Or please, let me tell you about, Sandy, Sandy, she's going through this. Don't do that. So validating someone's feelings and what they're going through is saying, I know that you've been really working hard at getting your company to where it needs to be. And I can totally understand why you feel like all the gas is out the tank. That is validation. And that's what I need to work on. And that's what many of you probably need to work on. And so this is one thing that we can definitely do, is to be able to validate. I will say that a person who is also experiencing burnout will definitely have a very difficult problem validating your own feelings and concerns. In some ways, talking to another person who is also experiencing burnout, they will, instead of validating your feelings and concerns, they will instead try to one up your feelings and concerns by sharing their own grievances. Don't go to a person and don't try to help a person with the same issues that you're dealing with. And what I mean by that is that if you haven't grasped it fully yourself, then it's like the blind leading the blind in a sense. You're not helping the situation, because if you are still in those stages of that I mentioned earlier, the 12 stages, and you may be possibly yourself in that stage of denial, you are then not going to be helpful in the helping of validating feelings. You can actually create a greater there's a word I wanted to use, but I can't. A greater issue, I'll just say. And then something that you can do when the time comes is understanding that a person who's experiencing burnout can sometimes struggle with the figuring out ways to get help, to release some of the load off of their shoulders, to how they could delegate. So when that time comes where you can say, how can I help? Don't do it that way. Because that person is going to say, I don't know, or I'm good, because they can't think of how you can help. Because if they knew how to compartmentalize and delegate and they felt confident doing so, they wouldn't be experiencing burnout. They would have already offloaded a lot of the stuff. So instead of doing that, just say, if you know all the things that they're struggling with juggling, right? If they're struggling with, doing the laundry and cleaning the house and picking up the kids on time from school and, cooking on a regular basis, why don't you, instead of how can I help out, say, just jump right in and say, I'm gonna pick up that dry cleaning. I'm gonna go ahead and do this load of laundry because I know that they have every intent on doing it. It's on their to-do list, but I just looked at their to-do list for today and there's 20 things on it. So let me go ahead and take care of these things right here, that, I know they need done. Let me go ahead and, drop off a meal to them or have a meal delivered to them, right? Let me do these different things. Something else is the kind gestures, sending a card. My friend Juanita Bryan sent me this beautiful card, and it says, "You are amazing." And it's in this fuchsia with these glitter, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And, there's this app, like this message inside, and she wrote me a message, and I keep it in my bathroom so I can see it every day. And, I have other friends and family members that do other kind gestures, the text messages. But it is such a beautiful reminder that number one, you're not alone, and you're not in your experience alone. And you can definitely feel underappreciated, unappreciated. You can feel very lonely. You can be in a household with 10 other people and still feel very lonely. And if you are working long hours, if you are just in this worker bee mode, those small gestures of kindness can definitely be very nurturing. So being able to share that with someone can be very helpful. The flowers, like, for me, flowers they just do something for me. It's just this one more symbol of life. And the thing is that, flowers bloom, and their total reliance on, everything else in this ecosystem to do its part for its survival. And so they're just free in that. And so I do love flowers and all the different things they symbolize. Something else you can do. Now, I will say this, when I say this part, you can research resources. Do not bombard your family member, your friend, your coworker with 20 back-to-back, emails and text messages or instant messages or whatever, about support systems. So, like, roll it out gradually. But, like, if they need help with childcare, and you find some childcare services that, closely align with their needs. They need a house cleaner. They need some type of other resource. If they need a meal service, like, you can provide them some of the, different options. Just don't bombard them, because that's just adding to the clutter that's in and the chaos that's already in their minds. So these are just some of the suggestions that I have found, and some of the suggestions that I've been able to utilize, that I try to tell my loved ones that, I need help with, that I'm like, I don't know. So when you hear things, right? So, like, for instance, what my family members heard, in December, what they heard is me most likely spiraling of a sort, because it seemed like everything technology wise was crashing on me. And it then handicapped anything that I could do. And rather than sit back and say, well, how can I help? Instead, they sprung into action. They didn't sit back and ask me, well, can I send you this phone, or can I send you this MacBook Pro? Because they knew I'd be like, no, it's fine. Because I'm going to try to solve it myself, right? And I would feel so guilty, so whatever. But instead, they knew what, and they just did it, if that makes sense, right? And I was so appreciative of it. It just filled my heart, because it was their grace. It was their love. It was their care. It was them saying, we've got you, and we know all the stuff that you're doing and all the stuff that you're trying to do. And here I'm scrambling, I'm asking my students, here I'm doing my live lectures with my students, and I'm saying, hey, give me some recommendations, like, which computers do you guys like, and what works best for this? And then I'm inundated with these different options, and now there's more options, and there's more stuff that I can't make decisions for, and I'm like, so so these are the things that want to make sure we say, with the goals. I led with the goals to tie into the burnout, because a lot of people are facing burnout because you're chasing too many goals. You're chasing too many big goals. You're trying to chase a bunch of goals at the same time. And that is just, right? I tie it in because there are some people that aren't experiencing burnout of sorts, not from goal attainment or trying to chase goals. Some people are just burnt out from life because things aren't going their way. And, when we have people like that, some folks say, oh, please, they're just lazy. Well, there's a great quote that Tony Robbins had shared that was, people are not lazy. They simply have impotent goals. That is, goals that do not inspire them. And so when we think about someone being lazy, or even when we try to call ourselves lazy, I'm just being lazy, that's the reason why I didn't achieve it. Sometimes it's just that our goal is impotent. All right. It didn't inspire us. It doesn't have to be a life-altering goal. Like, it doesn't have to be anything that can move the mountain, but did it inspire you? And sometimes that's what we're lacking. So don't confuse the inspire with the don't confuse our inspire with this need for ambition, with this driving of ambition where you're trying to check these boxes. Be inspired by the little things. And sometimes those little things can unfold to other things that took care of the big thing, right? Sometimes it creates a domino effect. But I just want to make sure that we do that. And there's a quote from Anne Lamott, and she said that almost anything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. So we have to remind ourselves to unplug. I find that there are some days and nights where I just decide I'm going to tap out for a few hours of any type of engagement of sorts, and I'm going to listen to an audiobook or read a book, or I'm definitely not going to write a book, or I'm not going to be writing on my book because that's work. Even though I'm inspired and I love it, right? But sometimes I need to detach. And so sometimes I'm going to watch something on TV or play a video game or play a card game. I may bust out and play some spades or 500 or whatever, right? So that I can disconnect. And then when I reconnect, I'm recharged and I've got that smile on my face and I'm ready to go. So these are things that wanting to make sure that I covered it. I'm looking at my notes really quick, making sure that something else is going for a walk. I think that's a really good reset. If you can go for a walk around the block, around your community, if you live in an apartment building and you've got, multi-levels, and heck, hit all those levels, right? You never know. You may see that someone has some pretty flowers or artwork or something outside their home. But these are some of the things I want to share. I want to make sure that everyone has the access to some of the resources that I've mentioned. So they will be available on our blog so that you can go to them. But, for the most part, you can search online on any of the browsers and a lot of this stuff will pop up as well. But hopefully this has been beneficial for those of you that are experiencing burnout and may not know it. Those of you that are experiencing burnout and you know that you're fully in it, as well as those of you that you have a loved one who you're saying, oh my goodness, that's them. So hopefully this will benefit all of you. So with that, it is that time. Once again, it's time to wrap up and go our separate ways until next time. If you guys have any questions or suggestions about this show, please email them to us at don'tcallitsmallbiz@gmail.com. I want to leave you guys with two quotes One is from Andrew Carnegie, and he's quoted as saying, "If you want to be happy, set a goal that commands your thoughts, liberates your energy, and inspires your hopes." And the second quote is from Steph Curry, NBA great, well-rounded athlete, father, husband, son. He said, "Plant seeds every single day that you know who you are, you know what you're about, and you know what goals you've set for yourself." With that, be sure to check us out on Facebook at ForemanAssociates and on Instagram and Twitter at Foreman LLC. Our podcast Twitter handle is It Ain't Small. Be sure to follow us and share us with your friends, colleagues, and family. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Just know that I haven't been on Instagram since November because the technological issues that have me locked out still. But I'm there at Natasha L. Foreman. I'm trying to work on a workaround and trying to work with Instagram/Facebook to regain entry. But you can still reach out to me on those platforms at Natasha L. Foreman. Say hello, share your story. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you. I want to make sure I give proper credit for our show theme song. It's called Higher Up, and it's by Shane Ivers. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to the Don't Call It Small Business Podcast, for sharing these episodes with others, and for your continued support. And don't forget what I tell you on each and every episode. Don't call what you're planning, thinking, dreaming, or doing little or small. Go big, go bold, or go nowhere. Thank you, everyone. God bless.